The #1 real estate expert in Germany is Professor Vogtländer from the German Economic Institute. He was answering 9 questions about German real estate in 2024. I know it says 7 questions, but we've actually identified 9. What will happen to mortgage rates? Will property prices continue to go down or rise again? And should you buy a property right now, wait before you invest, or even sell? All answers and more in this GermanReal.Estate video. 2024 started full of uncertainties and insecurities, right? The government lost 60 billion euro at the end of last year they need to recover from. We constructed less flats than ever before in the last 10 years, and at the same time rents are going through the roof, especially in our capital, Berlin. Us investors are getting a little mixed signals here from the German real estate market, right? And if there's one thing investors do not like at all, it is uncertainty. So let me give you some clarity with the help from Professor Vogtländer, so you know exactly if it's the right time to invest in real estate right now. Question 1 starts from the economic side of things. Why? Because the economic situation will have a major impact on the German real estate market. If the economy is strong, salaries are high and unemployment is low. Perfect for the real estate market. So let's see how we did there. Our GDP, gross domestic product, the value with which we measure economic growth, is basically flat since 2019. We recovered from COVID, which is good, don't get me wrong, but there's no growth either. At least in 2024, the projections range from -0.5% to 1.3%, going up to 1.5% in 2025. So at least the economy should grow ever so slightly, which should have a positive impact on the German real estate market. Aside from the economic influence on real estate, Professor Vogtländer also discussed the political influence. And oh boy, the professor doesn't like the political climate at all. Here in Germany, we have farmers protesting against the current government. We have hundreds of thousands of people protesting on the streets against the opposition. And even outside of German borders, we have the war in Ukraine and the conflict between Israel and Palestine. Professor Vogtländer says it perfectly, in my opinion. The political situation puts you in a really bad mood. That's why he calls for more political positivity, which would likely be also very positive for real estate investments. That's why I am glad we can deliver some positive news. Earlier this year, we just launched 2 new real estate investments for you guys, and we're working on a 3rd one, which would allow you to invest in the flat Freddie Mercury was living in. Yes, that's the guy from Queen. Check out our website GermanReal.Estate that is linked in the description for more infos. Another positive news for the real estate market is question 3. Our government just introduced its budget plan for 2024, the highest it's ever been. And with this record budget come really great promises for us real estate investors. After increasing the standard depreciation rate from 2% to 3% in 2022, the government is working on a 6% depreciation rate. 6%. That would double tax benefits for real estate investors and investors in our real estate security tokens, of course. Both would profit tremendously from that. And there are also some new KfW programs planned, which would give all of us access to mortgages with super low interest rates. We don't know a lot of details just yet, that's why I said earlier, it's just promises for now, nothing set in stone here. And that's one of the reasons why uncertainty among real estate investors is so high right now, because the government published a lot of good news last year and hasn't really followed up since. So these benefits are kind of hanging in the air right now. Professor Vogtländer is confident though that the government will make a decision in Q1. We'll keep you updated here on the channel, of course. Question 4. What will happen to the inflation rate this year? Lucky us consumers, inflation is coming down again after being at almost 10% 1 year ago. In January, inflation was at 2.9%, and the IFO Institute is expecting an inflation rate of 2.2% for this year. A high inflation rate is actually pretty good for real estate investors. We discussed this in a previous video, But the lower the inflation is, the lower interest rates will be. And that brings us to question 5. What's going to happen to interest rates and mortgage rates this year? Mortgage rates absolutely exploded in 2022 from about 1% to well over 4%. That's no secret. Now, because inflation went down over the last months, mortgage rates are coming down as well. Which I'm sure a lot of you guys will like a lot, because you think real estate is becoming more affordable now with a lower mortgage rate. But what some of you seem to forget is that property prices are probably gonna rise when mortgage rates go down. But we'll come to that in a moment. Mortgage rates are getting a little ahead of themselves because central banks around the world are expected to cut interest rates in spring or summer. We'll see if that actually happens. If yes, mortgage rates could go down even more. Question 6. The businesses that got hit the hardest while the real estate market was tanking over the last years are construction companies. And that's the reason why building permits are the lowest they have been over the last 9 years. Now that sounds bad, but if you think about it from an investor's perspective, it's not necessarily. Because the main worry many people had was that Germany is in a real estate bubble, partly driven by, quote-unquote, statistics like the bubble index from the Swiss bank UBS that ranked Frankfurt and Munich among the top 5 cities with the highest real estate bubble risk in the world. Let's think this through together. The construction permits of today are the buildings of tomorrow, right? So if the supply of properties is low because we're not building enough, how are we supposed to be in a real estate bubble that usually happens when there's excess supply? I don't understand it either. And Professor Vogtländer follows the same logic, which allows him to answer question 7, what's gonna happen to property prices? He starts by discussing commercial properties, and I couldn't agree more with what he's saying. Commercial real estate is not just from the financing side of things, a lot more difficult than residential real estate, but also from the investment perspective. Because what type of commercial real estate are we talking about? Offices that may be vacant if companies continue with their home office policy. That's the reason why 5.4% of office properties are empty here in Germany. Now, is that a lot or a little? It's more than twice as much as residential properties, but 4 times less than retail properties. And this goes to show you, hopefully, how challenging of a market commercial real estate is. And that's why we shy away from it, even though we get a lot of messages from you guys asking about an investment in commercial properties. And that's also what Professor Vogtländer says. Commercial real estate is too complex for private investors. And I fully agree. In a market with that many opportunities in residential real estate, there are very little arguments to engage in commercial real estate. Speaking about residential real estate, question 8, what's going to happen to residential property prices? We have certainly seen a correction in prices over the last 2 years. Not really a market crash like many people pretend, but certainly a correction. Professor Vogtländer thinks the bottom might be reached, especially if interest rates continue to fall and rents continue to rise. And again, I couldn't agree more. Over on Perfinex, we offer investment properties to our clients with up to 5% return on rent in really nice locations, like this penthouse here in Munich or a freshly renovated property at Bodensee. 5% return on rent in A and B locations is insane. This is what we have waited for years, almost since coming out of the global financial crisis. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the last answer from Professor Vogtländer. Should you invest in real estate right now? Well, as you can imagine, because Professor Vogtländer is a well-spoken man who chooses his words very wisely, it depends what kind of property we're talking about. Commercial real estate? No, we just talked about it. Way too complex for private investors with very little upside compared to residential real estate. That's a yes. In the residential market are currently really good opportunities out there. You're probably not going to get rich tomorrow, but you will definitely get a solid return if you have a long-term investment horizon and buy the right property. Or invest in our real estate security tokens.